Hello and welcome to the 2019 FIA Certified Gran Turismo Championships. It's the top 16 superstars and we are focusing on the Asia region and the Nations Cup for this race. My name is Tom Brooks, alongside me Jimmy Broadbent, and we're going to be guiding you through the action here today. Jimmy, this is going to be very, very exciting. We've seen so much close competition in the Asia region in the top 16 superstars in the past, and of course in the World Tour events that we've had so far this year as well. What do we reckon?
It's always very competitive in the World Tour, isn't it? And I must admit that my knowledge of the Asia-Oceania region isn't as good as it used to be, but very much looking forward to seeing what these guys can put on show for us today.
Well, fortunately, I've got a few notes written down ahead of this one. It is going to be very, very exciting. So let's find out a little bit more about what has happened up until this point, shall we? Well, the top 16 superstars sit like this going into the event. You can see Gore Ritchie there leads the way on 5,972 points. That is despite having missed the last two rounds. Very close and hot on his heels, though, is Akagi 1942 Me. And Akagi, of course, having competed in the World Tour events in previous events in years gone by as well. So he's a driver that is very much held in a high esteem amongst his competitors. Black Beauty there as well. That is Tatsuya Sugawara, who we've also seen at the Paris World Tour event earlier on this year. Pretty close up there at the top, isn't it?
It is, and it's kind of what we expect. These guys have always been very competitive with each other. And, of course, the way that the online racing is done in GT Sport, these guys are kind of off on their own little regions. So what's really interesting for us, of course, is when it's all said and done and we have all the guys go through to the finals, we get to see them all actually mixed with everybody else. And it's always great to see how that talent kind of pans out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, last year, if you look at it, we had the Asia-Oceania region combined. Now, of course, the Asia and Oceania regions are separate. So it does make things that little bit more competitive and, of course, that little bit closer there as well. And it is going to be very, very exciting. Anyway, we've got a race coming up for you, but let's have a look at the circuit that these drivers are going to be tackling, shall we, in a few moments' time. But let's have a look a bit further down the standings before that. You can see Legacy 0193 there just inside the top 10. That is Yoshiharu Amai, who we have seen, of course, in the Paris World Tour event earlier on this year. Not necessarily as close as you get too far down the order there, Jimmy, but just inside on the fringes of the top 10, not separated by too many points, are they?
No, it can all change very easily, and worth noting as well that only 2 drivers in our top 16 are not Japanese, so a bit of Japanese domination in this region.
Yep, certainly seems to be the case. So again, let's have a look at that circuit then, shall we? Because it's the track that we're going to be competing on for this Nations Cup race. The Autopolis International Racing Course, 4.6 kilometres long, as you can see, based over in Japan. So perhaps the local knowledge of a few Japanese drivers will come in quite handy here. A circuit really, as we've spoken about before in the World Tour events, of 2 halves more than anything. Some fast-flowing sections, some tighter and twistier corners. Do we think perhaps, as I said, Jimmy, that local knowledge might come in a bit useful here?
Maybe that and qualifying position, essentially. Qualifying position is everything around here, given the nature of the course. It's quite hard to overtake. Only really 2 big overtaking spots in my mind, which is T1 and T10, the hairpin that separates the first and last sectors. So getting close for those corners is essential. Otherwise, just to really follow the leader.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see the penalty line there just outside of turn 10 going onto that back straight. Keep an eye on that, because if any drivers are given penalties under race conditions, that is where they will receive it. And of course, if the field is quite close, they could be set to lose not only time, but also positions as well. Anyway, all being good, let's go over into qualifying, shall we? So the drivers now out on track. It's round 8 of the top 16 superstars for the Asia region, the Nations Cup we're looking at here. And this is Kerakuma EJ20. Kerakuma, otherwise known in real life as Takuma Miyazono, a driver, again, who we've had lots of experience with in events gone by at Takuma Miyazono. We ride on board with the number 4 here now. If you have a look back to last year, he was 9th in the Manufacturers' World Final for the Subaru team and 2nd place in the Asia-Oceania final for the Nations Cup as well. So a driver who should really be held in very high regard.
Yeah, a lot of experience in this field, so competition's going to be very tight at the top, and that's going to be reflected, I'm sure, by the qualifying that we're about to go through. The drivers coming around now, I think, now to complete their first flying lap, and so our first lap time on the boards coming in right now. A couple of 34s to 133.7 from Kerakuma, so he goes fastest for now. Legacy there, I think, on a bit of a chill lap at 140. Akagi goes into 2nd. We're getting to 3rd now. He's been pushed down by Karakana with a 1:34.1. Looks like a low 33 is what we're looking for kind of pole or around there. But this is the first kind of banker lap we've seen over other sessions, and we tend to get 2 quick laps from the drivers, and the second one seems to be a bit faster because of the fuel burning off as the session goes on. So I think we have a kind of initial Everyone's kind of feeling out the circuit, feeling out the competition, and I think the next lap will be the one to watch out for.
Yeah, it's a 10-minute qualifying session for these guys as well, and as you said there, Jimmy, fuel is very, very crucial because the driver's starting with 100 litres of fuel in their car. Of course, what they want is a nice light car to be setting those flying lap times on. So what we have seen in previous nations is drivers going around doing slower laps but keeping it at a high gear at full throttle to try and burn off as much fuel as possible, then stick a new set of rubber on and go out on track to set those faster lap times right at the very end of the session.
Yep, not unusual to see that. I'm sure we'll see something similar here today. So watching our current provisional pole sitter, Karakuma, make his way up the second half of the circuit. And now we've gone over to second place again. This second half of the circuit here, the uphill twisty section, it looks I think less difficult than it actually is. I think it'd be fair to say that. Lots of understeer, especially up here, getting on power in these high-powered Group 2 machines is very difficult. About 500 horsepower or so underneath your right foot. No traction control or anything like that. These things are absolutely glued to the ground as well through the fast stuff. So when you get to the slow stuff, the downforce peels off. And find yourself being caught unaware. Karakana doing what Tom said earlier on, coming in for a fresh set of tyres and going out, I think, to try again for a quick lap.
Yeah, absolutely right. Lots of drivers coming in, as you can see. Of course, they've got a couple of sets of options for tyres, racing softs and racing mediums going into the race. We'll talk more about strategy and such like a little bit after qualifying, but it's important to get those quicker lap times in. You won't see any drivers in qualifying on the racing medium compound of tyres. Such is the pace difference between the two compounds. Soft tyres very much the order of the day for these drivers, and quite a big gap actually that Karakuma at the front has got over the rest of the field, but again still enough time for these drivers to set a couple of flying laps. We're just looking at Karakuma here at the moment, who is just pounding round really more than anything at the moment, trying to burn off again as much fuel as possible, but in the process setting consistent lap times. This could be quite interesting here, Jimmy, because the session is actually quite short, but he may be focusing perhaps on his racing strategy here as well.
It's a possibility. You know, you can always go around in qualifying and get an idea of what the car's going to be like. Of course, got to bear in mind that you are set to run 100 litres of fuel when you come into the session. You can't change that, so might as well go out there, I guess, and see what the car is like on a higher fuel load. There is a fuel multiplier on in this race, 3 times fuel consumption, which means that 1 lap of driving equates to 3 laps worth of fuel. Nice and easy. So it's a good idea to get out there and have a look. But what Karakuma's going to do right now is burn off his other soft tyres. He's going to come and get a fresh set, go around and have one more stab at a flying lap. Now, in terms of what we expect to see for a pole time, I wouldn't be surprised to see a low 33. If you have a really, really hot lap, you might just sneak into the 32s. We haven't seen many people capable of that as of yet, but vast region, the Asia region, so we might see it today.
Yep, certainly so. These drivers, as you can see, all coming in. You can just see Akagi there also in the pit lane at the moment with the new set of rubber. That is Ryota Kokiban, the driver again who we're very familiar with. If you've been watching the World Tour event so far this year, 9th he finished in the Nations World Final last year, 10th in the Manufacturers World Final for Nissan as well. He's racing the Honda NSX, as are the majority of the field here in these Group 2 machines, Jimmy.
Yeah, it seems the NSX has been the car of choice across every region, really. It seems that at that point. It seems that it suits this circuit, it suits what the drivers want it for. I imagine probably a good mix of high-speed grip and low-speed mechanical grip for that difficult last section. So, of course, it being a Nations Cup race, you can pick whatever car you like. It's a bit different in manufacturers. You have to pick the car that's under your mark, so to speak. But with this, you can pick whatever you like and everyone's got the same car. So at least it's an equal playing field.
Yeah, you can see Akagi there, the bright purple livery certainly sticks out like a sore thumb, doesn't it, more than anything. Actually, just having a little bit of a look down the order there, Jimmy, as well. We've been used to seeing NSXs and a couple of GTRs up and down the region, but we've actually got a Lexus SC430 down in 12th position as well. Kar Saika, the driver who is competing with that machine. We're looking at it on screen there now. He's not going too well so far, having not set a fast enough sort of lap time, but still very interesting to see different machinery up and down the field.
Yeah, I mean, I always like to look at the old Lexus cars going round, so it's good to see one being represented on track and the livery as well, the simple Petronas livery. I've always, again, liked that colour, so it gets a thumbs up for me. Whether or not it will actually take him anywhere closer to the front of the field, we'll have to wait and see. Currently, he's just over 1.4 seconds off the pole position time, so a bit of work to do there for Saika, but the guy is now starting to psych himself up. I couldn't resist it. For their flying lap now, and you've got a couple of cars coming around onto their flying lap. Here is one of them. Mish 12 Calsonic, running a Calsonic livery Nissan GTR. I think I know which team he supports.
Yeah, no question about that, is there? Certainly. This is the tricky first section here, Jimmy, as well. And I tell you what, it starts off nice and fast and playing, then you've got these tight, twisty hairpin here, which really does not help the tyres. You can see sliding all over the place. They're trying to get on the power.
Just impatience, what it is. I mean, these guys, a lot of these guys don't run traction control because they find it to be quicker. If you can control the power of these things, if you're right foot alone, that's fantastic. You're seeing out the hairpin just kind of smashing the throttle. It's not the fastest way to get on the power, not the smoothest either. During the race, it will be bad for the tyres, but maybe he's found something in the car that we don't know about. We now plummet down the hill to this fast double right-hander. The first one is faster than the second one. You use all the downforce on the way in. The road isn't quite as accommodating on the second right-hander. You go back uphill, and then it's a matter of just very slowly scrubbing off speed as you come up to this. A very, very late apex right-hander. You start turning it now, you feel like you missed the corner at that point, but it is the right place to turn in. And then you come up to this last section, which includes this very tricky long right-hander. In the race situation, the front left tyre will take a big beating through here. If you get it right, you get a nice run onto the main straight. Hopefully a decent lap time. So let's see what Mr. Mish 12 Calsonic has managed. He goes across the start-finish line and goes second provisionally at 33.9. Arrow does not improve his position on the 134.2. Here comes Black Beauty, goes up to third position, the 134.0. Not many people managing to get into the 33s at the moment, Tom.
Yeah, Karakuma, one of the only drivers who is at top and goes over the line to not improve in his time, but still stays on provisional pole. What about a Kagi here as well, down in 5th position, as we mentioned earlier on, of course, otherwise known as Ryota Kokibun. Through the final corner he goes in that Honda NSX. Can he improve? Third row of the grid currently, and it's not an improvement for him over the timing line. So disappointment there for Kokibun. Gio Honda, meanwhile, on a bit of a good lap, down in 8th position so far. Personal best for him in the second sector. Still a couple of tenths of a second there, though, off the pace. Let's see what he can do, though, as he comes out of the final corner. The other drivers coming over the line. There's G-Motor S-Ben coming over the line. Shines 0147 and Car Psyker also about to come over the timing line as well in that SC40, down in 13th position. Currently is he. Over the line he goes, up into 11th position. Couple of places being improved there. What about Gio Honda, though? Out of the final corner, over the line, 8th position currently. Does he improve? Well, he does, up into 5th position. Good performance there, but you can see Karakuma nearly 2 tenths of a second over the rest of the field. Japanese drivers there, Jimmy, inside the top 10. Very, very impressive indeed.
Yep, I mean, what you expect from this region, a very quick region, and as we saw in the standings, pretty much dominated by the Japanese drivers at the moment. Doesn't mean, of course, that we don't expect to see some of the other drivers moving up as we go on. But an interesting race. I think we're in for one. I think we're in for one here.
Yeah, certainly so. It is going to be very, very interesting indeed. So we know how the grid is going to line up for this Asia Nations Cup race. Let's have a little bit of a look at what they're going to be contending with, though. As we mentioned in qualifying, racing medium and soft tyres available to these drivers over the course of 11 laps. 51 kilometres just over is the race duration. In total, you can see 3 times tyre consumption there and 9 times tyre wear as well. So it is going to be pretty crucial for these drivers to be very careful on those tyres. And this, Jimmy, is how the strategy looks as well. We saw the drivers on racing soft tyres. In theory, that's probably what they're all going to be starting on, as they'll last about 6 laps or so. But are they going to be pitting? Are they going to be changing to the mediums? Are they going to go the whole way on one set of tyres? What do we reckon?
It doesn't seem appealing to use the racing medium at all around here. It's an option for drivers to use if they want to try doing something different. But that 6 laps there on the racing soft tyre, that indicates just how long the tyre life is, so to speak. You can still drive on the tyre, it gets very slippy after that. But to be honest, even when it's very slippy and very tricky, it's not much slower than the racing medium. So you have to go, right, am I going to lose 12 seconds in 4 laps? And then you have to do that maths and go, maybe. So maybe we'll see people try no stop. I think the more popular strategy will be a 1 stop on the racing soft tyre, but we'll see what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing in the rules that says they have to use both compounds of tyres, by the way. They can just use the racing soft or the racing mediums or whatever combination they decide to use over the course of this 11-lap race here at the Autopolis International Racing Course. So with that said then, let's get ready, shall we, and head over to the grid ahead of the race. The drivers leading the way around in through the final corner at the Autopolis Racing Course then here in Japan. Karakuma leads the field away as they get ready to come over the timing line. Nations Cup for the Asia region for the top 16 superstars, and round 8 in 2019 is underway as they all come over the timing line and head down towards that first corner for the first time of asking. You can see a mixture of different cars and different liveries. Is anybody going to make a move? It's going to be pretty static, I reckon, heading down towards that first corner. And I reckon for the first half a lap or so, as everybody just gets heat in their tyres and gets their bearings, but still it's going to get pretty exciting as the tyres warm up and the fuel begins to burn down. Those different strategies come into place.
Kerry Kuma has a unique challenge as the pole sitter. He has to go down the T1 and find his braking point whilst not going at his normal race speed, so he's done that well, led the field round, and there's been no collisions that we can see anyway going back down. Right now it's great to see a Nissan GTR do so well in this race here. It seems that this has been a circuit track that's been dominated by the NSX, but we have Mish 12 Calsonic currently running in second position, falling back a little bit though from Kerry Kuma, coming up to the hairpin for the first time. Look how much better Mish is on the brakes there. It's right up behind on the rear spoiler on the NSX, but it seems that Kerry Kuma has the better exit.
Yep, certainly so. Coming out of turn number 10, that's where the penalty area is. You saw those yellow markers either side of the circuit, and that's where, if any drivers are given penalties, where they will be receiving them, as we mentioned earlier on. A few positions changing hands, a little bit further down the order. Arrow SR has made a bit of a poor start. He's gone a bit tumbling down the order. A few drivers changing positions here and there, a little bit further down as well. But otherwise, as we said, pretty static for the first lap or so. We're just looking at Mish 12 Calsonic here in the Nissan GTR. This is the best showing of a GTR we've seen so far in the other regions. A very impressive performance from the Japanese driver as they come ready to complete the first lap.
So they're across the line, so one lap down, 10 to go now at this point, and this is already at the point where the drivers are going to be starting to think about what their strategy is going to be. Again, we called it at the start of the race. What we expect to see is we see a bit of a wiggle there from Mish going through T1. We expect to either see a split strategy, so a one-stop strategy on the soft compound of tyre, or a no-stop on the soft compound of tyre, which means towards the end we have the hard charges on fresh tyres versus those just trying to get to the end on their worn tyres. So on board now with Black Beauty, currently on the last step of the podium, third position, nice and soft coming out of the hairpin. You see how different the attitude is on the throttle out of the hairpin there compared to qualifying. I think he's just trying to keep those soft tyres alive. Again, bear in mind we have 9 times tyre wear, so I like to use the analogy a lot, so I'll use it one more time. One lap on the one lap around the course is like 9 laps on the tyres in terms of wear, so within a few laps they're getting very worn indeed.
Yeah, certainly so. Lovely that livery on Black Beauty's car there, by the way. That looks absolutely fantastic. The Red Bull Camo S replica as they come down into that fast right-hander down in towards turn 11, and this is into the tight and twisty final sector on the lap. The top 3 beginning to break away a little bit here and there. The gap beginning to become quite pronounced with inside the top 5 there as well. Here is Gilles Honda, who we saw having that cracking final qualifying lap. He improved from 8th up to 5th position right at the end of that session. And you can see Yoshi on the side of his car there.
Yeah, interesting livery compared to Black Beauty.
Yeah,
this guy's just whacked some Yoshis on the side of his car. Yeah, that's good. Obviously we know what he's into, but right now I'm sure he's focusing on the race and saying that Akagi is starting to gain a bit. This is the good overtaking spot down in T1. Akagi's deep in the slipstream, not quite close enough for a move at the moment. Of course, Akagi 1942, Ryo Tokokiban, was Asia Oceania last year, our regional champion, so definitely not a novice by any stretch of the imagination.
And these Group 2 cars, Jimmy, as well, they're based on DTM and also Super GT rules essentially. So why don't we think the slipstream isn't quite as effective in these cars as it is in, say, for example, Group 3 and Group 4 machinery?
Well, the slipstream is fairly decent. It's just trying to get close enough to use it. Of course, these cars punch a big hole in the air with the aero they're running, which means that if you're running close behind someone, there is no air for you. Your car is not being pushed down to circuit. It's not working optimally as it would if you were running alone on the circuit. So you end up either understeering or just not having the grip you had before. So getting close through a fast corner is difficult. It's through the slow corners where you have to make the difference where that downforce is not coming into play as much. And of course, in these cars as well, something we don't really talk about too much is that downforce aids braking. When you going very quick, especially in the T1, you can brake very late because of the downforce, but you have to make sure you peel off the brake pedal as you come into the braking zone, because as you slow down, downforce is coming off the car because there's less air going over the car. I think that makes sense. I think it does. And of course, these guys are not running ABS either, so there's a lot of skill that goes into driving these cars quickly.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I tell you what, if you ever come to a World Tour event, don't forget the next World Tour event, by the way, taking place on the 20th to the 23rd of June at the Nürburgring 24-hour event. If you do end up coming along to that and having a look at it, you will see the skill of these drivers behind the sim rigs that we'll have on stage there as well. Here is Karakuma though, meanwhile, Jimmy. He's managed to pull out a second over Mish 12 Cal Sonic. That gap staying pretty much consistent there last time around, but doing a good enough job to keep himself out of harm's way, just trying to break that slipstream from behind as well here.
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea here. Just get out of slipstream range, and that stops giving your opponent a free pass, essentially going down the straight. What the slipstream does, if you are not aware, just in the way that dirty air can affect you through the corner, slipstream does the same thing but in a straight line, so you have less air resistance essentially going down the straight, meaning the car is capable of building up the speed quicker. It's always good to follow someone down the straight if you're close, but then try to avoid it through the fast corners. So right now Mish is just about, he'll be getting a sniff of slipstream at the moment, not a lot of it, but enough to increase his speed. And that's something else you've got to be careful with, because if you're in the slipstream and you approach a corner at 5-10 k's quicker than you're used to doing, and you brake at the same braking zone, you're going to go wide.
Yeah,
so it really is a very variable thing driving on track with other cars.
Yeah, braking zone does become all different, doesn't it? And it just completely changes the characteristics. At the moment, though, what he's going to be suffering from in these infield sections more than anything is that dirty air, that horrible understeer, where you're just turning and turning and turning the wheel, trying to get some purchase. You can see just how much lock Mish 12 Cal Sonic is having to put in there. That's not going to be doing him any favours at all in terms of, one, keeping up with Karakuma, and also keeping his tyres in good condition.
Yeah, and of course, in this race, it's about making these tyres last as long as possible. Now, we do have our first pit stop coming in. So that's Shohei, I should say. He's come into the pits to go for the top. We got a spinner. Who was that? That was Kawakana. Kawakana there. I think what happened there is he got onto the grass on the exit, or he did what we've seen a couple of times so far. People come out of T1, punch to the throttle, and that happens. They just go around.
Oh, I'll tell you what as well, that Himke there nearly followed him through, because that was very close indeed. The problem is with Kawakana, you can see having to sit there and wait for the rest of the retaining field to go by before he has a safe opportunity to get himself back on track. Very sensible there more than anything from Kawakana, but disappointing nonetheless, because he was going pretty well inside the top 10 up until that point in the Ray Brigade NSX. Now he's got dirty tyres, so he's sliding all over the place. Maybe it's a combination of his tyres being a little bit too worn for the power he was trying to put through, or maybe he was just being a bit too overconfident getting on the throttle coming out of that corner. We haven't seen a replay, and we probably won't see a replay, but otherwise still a very, very disappointing situation for him to be involved with.
Yeah, I'd be tempted to say it was more just heavy right foot, I think, out of there. It's easy to do in these cars, a lot of power, no traction control, and of course, as you say, with the warm tyres, this compounds and you end up having a super car. Meanwhile, Gilles Honda has got past Akagi 1942. We missed that on the circuit, so Gilles Honda has moved up into 4th and Akagi down to 5th. I think that's because of the Shirakawa, going around, Karakana, going around. So there you go. Commentator works out eventually, but now Akagi's right in the slipstream of Gilles Honda. Will he pull to the right to pass? No.
Ooh, close though, very close going on to the brakes. The problem is as well is that whilst he's stuck behind them, the last thing he wants is to biff him up the backside as well.
Yeah, penalty.
Yeah, he certainly would get a penalty. You're quite right. The steward here, you can see Black Beauty
had a mistake.
He's had a problem here because he's really begun to drop back, and he's now become from a two-way scrap to a three-way scrap. Here comes Akagi all the way around the outside, up the inside through the right-hander, holds it through the outside line into the left-hander. That is a brilliant move from Akagi. Ryota Kokibun there doing a great job behind the wheel of the NSX. His next target is going to be that podium position that this man here is currently holding, Black Beauty.
That was an interesting move. I didn't see that coming. I think Gilles Honda must have just let it go, essentially, because you don't usually see a pass around the outside here. But now Akagi, as you say, is now hot on the heels of Black Beauty. And look again how much quicker Akagi is through the hairpin section. A little bit of a twitch on the throttle there just shows how hard the Japanese driver is trying to catch his countrymen as we go down again to the second half of the course. All about being nice and easy up here. Now, given that a lot of these guys have not pitted yet, I am wagering that the majority of these fellas are going to be trying for the no-stop.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what is going to happen. As you say, Jimmy, the problem is you go past the point of no return, really, more than anything. If you carry on for a couple of laps more, is there any point losing 12, nearly 14 seconds? Karakuma, he is going to continue onwards then, so he feels pretty confident with those racing soft tyres that he is able to continue onwards. Likewise, the top 3 all following suit. Make that the top 4 and top 5. Nobody pitting, nobody blinking. You can see just how much time Akagi gained over Black Beauty there. We didn't see the mistake that Black Beauty made during that lap. Regardless, though, it has allowed this gap to close up, and the fight for the podium position is very much well and truly on. And it could come down, if there's going to be no stopping here, Jimmy, to who is going to preserve their tyres best and have more grip left at the end of this race.
Yep, definitely. And I think just on that, Shohei, they're down in 8th position. He's someone who, he's the first of our pit stop runners, so to speak. So he's there, and he's going to have a quick car all the way to the end. Now he's a long way behind the leaders, so I don't think he'll be challenging for a win at any point. Here he is now on track R, running that awesome Ridge Racer Type 4 livery there. That brings back some good memories. An awesome game on the original PlayStation. But let's see what he can do now, because he's gaining on the circuit in front. He's already taken a second out since I first peeked at the relative there, so he's definitely lapping very quickly right now. When he's next time by the line, we'll let you know his lap times compared to the cars around him. But definitely on a charge now, and I think we'll see him move up at least a couple of places before the end of this race.
Yeah, certainly will. You can see the Indonesian driver of Kim HKN there in the pits as well. He was right down the order, so it's going to be quite far back on the rest of the field. Doesn't look like he's really going to be too far involved in this fight. Meanwhile, Akagi still not too far away from Black Beauty, has dropped a little bit further back. That gap has become a little bit more pronounced as this lap has gone on between those 3 drivers. So let's keep an eye out and see what the lap times are between the 2, whether any gaps are going to increase or decrease. Miss 12 Cal Sonic last time around, he was a 1 minute 37.8. Black Beauty, he was 7/10 of a second quicker there, Jimmy, as well. He was a 1:37.1, which was matched by Akagi, this man here in 4th position.
It seems that Mish is struggling a little bit with the tyre wear. That could have been another factor of why the NSX is so popular around here. It might be a tyre wear thing. Some cars wear their tyres a little bit more aggressively than others, and it seems right now that GTR is struggling somewhat as it's falling back into the clutches of both 3rd and 4th position. Just an update, as I mentioned before, I'll give it to you. Shohei's last lap time was a 1:35.3, so around a second and a half faster than this leading bunch, and about 2 seconds faster than some of the cars in front of him. And as you can see, the gap between him and Saika now down to 3.5 seconds. We'll concentrate on this battle for second right now. And Mish 12 Calsonic in, of course, that's a very pretty Calsonic liveried car, making his way down the hill for the 8th time. So Akagi now starting to gain onto the back of Black Beauty. Now, you're Akagi, you've seen how, I guess, he takes it easy, he doesn't force the issue too much. We saw him when he was behind Jill Honda, just didn't really want to push it too much. I wonder if he'll be a bit more aggressive now towards the end of the race, because you have to try and think, right, can I get past these guys? If I can get past these guys, can I maybe put a challenge onto the leader? Or maybe he's being realistic, saying, you know what, I don't think I can catch Karakuma now. He's about 4 seconds up the road from me at the moment. Maybe second's the best I can do.
Yeah, absolutely. A bit of a slide there going through the left-hander for Akagi as well. That's not going to be helping the life of his tyres in these latter stages. Very much too late to pit now for these drivers. They're going to be losing far too much time on the road unless everybody else followed suit. But still, they're going to be dropping quite significantly further down the order. Meanwhile, Shines 0.057 up there in 6th position as well. Also hasn't pitted. The top 7 drivers, of course, in this race now haven't pitted. Meanwhile, Shoei, the first driver who has pitted, needs to keep an eye on him there, Jimmy, as well, because he's the driver, as you mentioned earlier on. He's on fresher rubber, and he is going quite significantly quicker as we look at him now than the rest of the field. You can see him there with Car Saika just in front of him. He's very much closed up that gap over the last couple of laps or so, and surely he's going to be thinking about making a couple of moves and getting himself inside the top 5 on these last few laps.
So it's Shoei.
Shoei, apologies.
I mean, because my history of pronouncing Japanese names has not been good. I just asked Mr. Ryoto Koki for that. Yeah. Anyway, we'll get back to this. Look how close he is. Look at just the advantage on the new tyres is so massive that at this point in the race you must be thinking, I've made the right choice. But of course, he's down in 8th, soon to be up to 7th. He's coming up to the hairpin now. Saika indicating there, I think, to show I'm not going to fight this. But there he does fight it somewhat. He's on the outside. There's no grip out there.
He loses 2 though,
yeah,
as well.
He doesn't lose 1, he loses 2 places back to Arrow as well. They're going to go side by side down the hill. Arrow's got the outside line. Saika has no choice but to pull back in. I think you meant to let one of them through, not both of them in. Look at that, Tom. Right on the back now, shines.
Look at the closing speed there from Shoei as well. Absolutely brilliant. Threw it to the left-hander like candy from a baby. That was so easy for him. And Arrow as well, another driver who has pitted, fresher rub of him and trying to think about going around the outside. I tell you what there though, Jimmy, we've had a problem for the race leader here because he has gone from the race lead now down into 5th position. It's Mish 12 Cal Sonic in the Nissan GTR. So whilst we were focusing on that battle inside the top 10, some kind of a disaster has befallen Karakuma here, and now he is in 5th position.
Yeah, we were just looking at I was just looking at who was next on Shohei's list, and I was like, Karakuma, wasn't he leading? And so I'm afraid we've missed that. I think he must have spun somewhere on that lap. His last lap time here, yeah, 1:51. So he must have had a spin somewhere or some mistake. He's not coming for tyres at all. And that means that Mish 12 Cal Sonic inherits the lead. It is the first time I have seen a GTR lead one of these races, so I can't help but be a little bit biased and cheer for him and say good luck, Mr. GTR, but it is hotly contested now. That Beauty and the Cargill have gone from fighting for the second step on the podium, or first step on the podium, to actually fighting for the win. So this is going to be an absolutely tantalising last lap. What can a Cargill do from 3rd position?
Let's keep an eye out. This is going to be very, very exciting indeed now. These drivers separated by less than 1 second. You can see just how close they are on your screen at the moment. It is going to come down to who has preserved their tyres the best. An unforced error for Karakuma there in the race lead. We didn't see what happened, but it has spiced up the action here in this Asia Nations Cup race in the top 16 superstars, and you can see how close they are going through this final part of the lap and how much the race leader Mish 12 Cal Sonic is struggling with understeer in that Nissan GTR as well. Are Black Beauty and Akagi going to be able to do anything about it though? That is the tantalising question. We're coming on to the final 4.6 kilometres of this Autopolis International Racing Course, and the man on the move is Shoei here, and he's got the former race leader Karakuma very much in his sights. He's got the target locked on his back, and surely he is going to try and find his way through down in towards turn 1 into the slipstream he is now. Karakuma, is he going to go defensive? Is he going to try and hold him up? Is he going to defend that position? He goes over to take his normal racing line. Shoei has the inside line. They're side by side coming down towards the first corner, and very easily done there for Shoei. He's up into the top 5, into 5th position at the start of the final lap. And Arrow 71 is also fancying a move there through. He's going side by side with Karakuma. It goes from bad to worse for him, and Legacy coming through as well. So 3 spaces lost in the space of just as many corners for Karakuma. That is an absolute shocker of a final lap for the Japanese driver.
An absolute nightmare there for Karakuma, from bad to worse. So Shohei then will take 5th position for now. But of course, our focus goes back to this, the battle for the podium. Black Beauty just about holding off Akagi. Akagi's been the quickest car of the pack for the last few laps, but has had nowhere to go. And Black Beauty, there goes Akagi then, tight line through the hairpin. They're going to run side by side down to the bottom, but I think his exit speed was compromised with that tighter line, and Black Beauty pulls back in front. So these guys are going to be going absolute hammer on tongue until we get to the start-finish line, which is good for Mish 12 Cal Sonic. He hasn't got to worry about them, but the battle for second is hotting up with only a couple of corners to go.
Yeah, the great thing is, whilst these two drivers are battling amongst one another, it just allows that breathing space, doesn't it, for Mish 12 Cal Sonic? If he can hold it all together through this final sequence of corners, he's surely going to have that position. Is Black Beauty going to be able to hold on to second place though? There's 2 corners remaining. I don't think he's going to be close enough unless Black Beauty has a poor run through the final corner, which he doesn't. Out of the final corner though, the closest winning margin we've seen in the Nations Cup. Mish 12 Cal Sonic takes victory here at the Autopolis circuit. Very close as well for 6th position between Arrow, who just gets it by less than 1/10 of a second ahead of Legacy. That's an absolutely fantastic podium though. As we said, less than a second separating those top 3 drivers, and what a great end to a brilliant Asia Nations Cup Top 16 Superstars race.
Real shame there for Karakuma, finishing in 8th position in the end. So, he led the majority of the race, but I think he just couldn't deal with the tyres at the end of the race. It made the unforced error, as we said, and that was his race over and done with. But great to see a Nissan GTR take it to the NSX. If it's only the one, this one didn't do too well, unfortunately. Mr. Young Gill finishing in 15th is the last of our finishes here Kim HKM in another NSX there. But a great result there for Mish, and that was a fantastic finish.
Yeah, it was, and points for the best livery for Kim HKM there. He might not have got the results he wanted, but he certainly got the prettiest car on the grid. Here are your final results then, and you can see Mish 12 Cow Sonic takes a victory ahead of Black Beauty, and all Japanese top 8. A brilliant race. Fastest lap there for Legacy right at the very end. So Jimmy, those softer tyres, those newer rubber, really helping him. And here we can see the competitors who finished from 9th position down to 16th. Those gaps becoming more pronounced going further down the order.
Now, of course, Karakuma, who did lead the majority of the race, ended up finishing in 8th position, had a spin halfway through the race, which took him out of the lead. We didn't see it, but we have found a replay. Let's go into that now. So then, here is what happened to our ex-leader, Karakuma, coming out of the hairpin, down the hill, business as usual there, because he's scrapped for second in the background, comes around the first double right-handers. Oh, he just goes wide into the curb, catches the white line, then onto the grass and spins for what must seem like an eternity, and that was his race victory, gone in an instant.
Yeah, 3 positions lost there for Karakuma. You can see the point standings, though, not changing too much. Still Gory Ritchie leading the way despite not competing in this round. Relatively close still at the top of the order, as you can see. And looking a little bit further down, gaps becoming a little bit more pronounced just inside the top 10 there. You can see Yukiku in 7th position, Yamado Racing there in 8th position. From 9th down to 16th, this is how it looks. Mitch 12 Cal Sonic after his victory. He's now in 9th position, so a great bit of progression there for Mish. You can see there as well that Hevan inside the top 10 as you look a little bit further down the order as well. Lots of different drivers, lots of drivers from Japan and a couple of other nationalities spread amongst the top 16 superstars. Anyway, what an exciting Nations Cup race we had. What about the next Top 16 Superstars event, though, I hear you ask? Well, that will be happening on the 25th of May, 2019. If this one is anything to go by, it is going to be an absolute blinder.